The following program is a sports handicapping show. That's right, we will be discussing sports betting and all kinds of other gambling stuff, including game predictions. As you know, not every bet will win, but we do our best. Feel free to use this information at your own risk, and remember, wager wisely, folks.
Broadcasting from the Vegas Video Network studios, live from the Las Vegas Strip, Covers.com presents Vegas SportsDay. And now from the sports betting capital of the world, here are your hosts, Teddy and the Professor.
It's Valentine's Day in Sin City, and you are watching Vegas SportsDay, the pulse of the sports betting world. I'm your host, Teddy Covers, joined, as always, by my colleague, the Professor, Dave Malinsky.
Of course, in Vegas, it's always Valentine's Day. It just costs a little bit more here. Coming up today, we're going to start with a referendum on refs. We'll break down whether the Grammy whammy will impact the Lakers tonight. And many of you will be watching the Alabama-Florida previews with suspended animation. We'll try to break down what's really going to be going on in that matchup tonight.
So, Dave, first take on a Tuesday, lots of exciting action on the hardwoods last night. What'd you see that you want to share with our audience?
Follow up from something we talked about on the show yesterday. We watched the Clippers against the Mavericks, and at crunch time, the Clippers looked half naked. You know, the first time we see them in a showdown on the road without Chauncey Billups. Now, earlier in the year, we talked about how great their end game was. Chris Paul can get the ball to anyone he wants to, pretty much whenever he wants to. Billups, a great end-game shooter. He was the one that won the first Dallas game on a three-pointer at the buzzer. What happens last night? Randy Foye, 0 for 7 from the field, a non-factor at crunch time so defenses can sag off of him. Blake Griffin at the free throw line. Did you see that? There's going to be some hack-a-Blake coming in the future. Right now, this is an extremely damaged team. Billups' presence meant more to them than perhaps we even realized because of those end-game situations. Right now, they don't have anywhere to go with the basketball. Tie game, less than a minute to play, except for Paul creating for himself. And you saw a step-back three that he made was their best offensive maneuver. So a team that we liked a lot to possibly get as high as a 3 or 4 seed in the West, they got some moves to make if they're going to get up to that position. Okay, it's Valentine's Day. Nice shirt.
Thank you.
Was that...
It was, yes, a Valentine's gift this very morning. It was Obama wore it on TV, I guess, and Kara liked it, tracked it down, and now I'm wearing it today. So
now that you're wearing that, we can get on with the show, right? No more Valentine's talk. We can get right to sports.
We got to do a first take on Valentine's Day today. Of course.
We just did.
You got your first take in, and I have a first take right here. Take a look at this. Actual notes from Kara, okay? Because the bottom line is, Valentine's Day, it's a pretty simple formula for guys. At least we think. We spend money, and at the end of the night, we get laid. That's the way it's supposed to work on Valentine's Day. Well, I asked Kara this morning to write me just a couple of tips to make sure that that formula works, not just for me, but for everyone out there in viewer land. So this is what Kara says, okay? She says gifts, no vacuum cleaners, no irons, no subscriptions for Jenny Craig. 2 kinds of gifts you're allowed to get on Valentine's Day. You're supposed to get jewelry or perfume. That's it. What are you going to do for Valentine's Day? No Groupon coupons. You know, you have to spend a little bit of money. She says dinner, a show of some kind, or some kind of entertainment. We're going for massages later. That'll work just fine in that regard. So dinner and entertainment, jewelry and perfume equals, there it is right there, sex. 98.5% chance. Her quote, women know they are expected to give it up if this formula is complete. Would you agree, Dave?
Okay, guys. That's what it costs him, okay? And keep in mind, he and Kara have been together for a long time. So if you've been with someone that long, and that's what it takes, that's not good. That's not good.
I'm just trying to help here. Enough with helping. Let's go to the mailbag. We have to go through some viewer email. We had a great one coming in from someone who wanted to remain anonymous. We'll just call him Media Guy. And his question is, when you guys are quantifying margins between teams in college basketball, Do you factor in the officials for that particular night? And if you do, is it a specific thing or is it more general? The thing I'm trying to determine is whether there's a feeling among bettors that officials in a college hoop game are generally skewed towards the home team. What's your take, Dave? Is that legitimate, or is that something that, not really all that valid?
We've mentioned before that if we'd been on the air for 25 or 30 years, we would give different answers to different questions over time. This is a very good question. The answer's a little bit different. Back in the 80s and in the 90s, yeah, we did see a little bit more home court bias. Not so much bias for any particular team, but the home courts in general because of the influence of those fans. We also found, too, that home coaches were more likely to work officials than visiting coaches would. But television has changed all that because now the officials know that every call they make is very, very scrutinized. Yeah, we still have a lot of things we question. We're going to break down some of these Texas stats more in the weeks to come because of that awkward phenomenon we've seen with them. So that's very an awkward thing for officials. They know almost everything is on camera, and in the YouTube world, that's particularly significant. Remember last Monday night, we talked about that unfortunate Portland endgame against Oklahoma City. We lost the play of the day on a blown goaltending call. How quickly did that go viral? The next morning, I want to go and watch it again on video to make sure what I saw was correct. That video was available just about everywhere. So officials have to be very vulnerable to that. But here's why we also brought this question up for this week. Coming ahead, we have Bracket Buster Saturday. Now, we've mentioned several times in this show before how erratic officiating can be on Saturdays at the lower level schools. Keep in mind, you only have so many officials that are qualified. So those officials get spread out on a Saturday. During the week, you can get officials from good conferences who have a Thursday off, and they'll go down to one of the lesser schools. Come Saturday, they can't do that. You got a lot of high school guys that get elevated. This particular Saturday, Bracket Buster Day, you're going to see a lot of really, really bad officials who not only don't know that level of play, though, they don't know the teams at all. So they're calling players and coaches they don't know much about. That's what leads to erratic games and awkward statistics and results. So be careful with that stuff. But for now, no, we just don't incorporate that into our thinking.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave, because I think the question specifically asked about home teams. We're talking about home teams getting the benefit of the doubt on a lot of these calls. In college hoops, we're saying that doesn't happen, that in the modern era, that's pretty much, in a one-word answer, yes or no, the answer is no.
Not as much as it used to, and more in non-conference. When you get in conference games, because if it's a conference game, that official is officiating both schools. If it's a non-conference game, you're officiating one, and you do something to the other guys, you'll never hear about it. Conference play, we do negate that because you do have to account for both schools.
So the bias towards the home teams, not what it once was in college basketball. Great email, media guy. Thank you. And please keep those questions coming. We're getting good questions on a daily basis. We answer as many as we can on air. The address, of course, sportsday@covers.com. You can follow us on Twitter. Ask us a question in 140 characters or less at Vegas Sports Day. And, of course, you can get involved in the community. There are active threads and discussions going right now, covers.com/posting forum.
We do promise you that if you do follow us on Twitter today, he will not be tweeting this evening about how that's going. Don't need to say anything more about that. Okay, you've probably seen the video of Kobe hitting yet another game winner at Toronto on Sunday. It's the rest of Kobe's road trip that we think is important. That's coming up next in the post-mortem. You're watching Vegas Sports Day.
Are you looking for the latest odds, the fastest scores, the most important trends, and the best matchups and stats? Are you looking for the key late-breaking information that can make you a winner? Well, Covers.com has the answer. The world's largest sports betting community gives you a front row seat in the heart of the action, from the opening lines to the final scores. If you want to stay ahead of the game, Covers covers the numbers.
Hey, I'm Al, man. Is that how you get them to do that all the time? Just sit there and be an ass. Is that it? Hey, I'm Al. Hey, I'm Al Mancini at Top of the Food Chain. You are watching the Vegas Video Network. We got big forks, big spoons. I got a big mouth. I got no guests.
Okay, guys, let's scrub up. Let's get those surgical gowns on. It's time for the post-mortem. We're going to take you deep inside the game to show you things you should have seen, but probably didn't.
Okay, every once in a while, we have to cheat a little bit on a photo. We'll have the right player, but maybe not the right play. A quarterback throwing a pass that ends up being incomplete, a basketball player taking a shot that bricks. We cannot always know the end result of each play when we do our digging. But we got this one right. Jordan Prunty absolutely nailed this three-pointer against Southern Illinois on Saturday. How do we know that? Well, Prunty nailed every three-pointer that he took on Saturday, all 6 of them, 6 of 6 from downtown in that ballgame. And the Sycamores, as a team, game for the ages. But in doing so, they also provide some difficult issues as they take the court for their next game tonight at home against Illinois State. It's a classic kind of game where we need to get out the scalpels ahead to the post-mortem.
Or scalpums if you're a Florida State fan, you know. Yeah, this is one of these results when people say, gee, why are sports so difficult to predict? Well, if you want to calculate the odds of this event on Saturday, it almost goes off the charts. Indiana State made 12 out of 12 three-pointers in beating Southern Illinois. It's the all-time NCAA record not only for best performance in a game, but most consecutive three-pointers made by a team at any time, even crossing teams from one game into the next. That's pretty good shooting. But here's what makes it interesting. They can't shoot. So let's take a look at Indiana State and Jordan Prunty and how they've been shooting all season from three-point range coming into Saturday. Interesting in that the team and Prunty both the exact same percentage. They were at 32.6. So now imagine in your mind something that happens less than 1/3 of the time comes up 12 times in a row. That's pretty darn good. But now we take it a step further. We think, wait a minute, this team was 268th in the nation in three-point shooting. They did that well. That's marvelous. They should have blown Southern Illinois out. Now the problem, they were 8.5-point favorites. They won the game by 10. How do you have the game of your lives and just barely cover the spread? If they had gone 11 out of 12 from three-point range, they might not have covered in that game. That's why we have to be careful with these adjustments. If you only saw that score, you upgrade Indiana State a little bit, you downgrade Southern Illinois a little, despite the fact that Southern Illinois won the rebounding, they had fewer turnovers, they actually did more things right on the court. That final score was largely determined by something very fluky, the likes of which we will probably never see again. Something we have seen often, of course, is Kobe Bryant knocking down game-winning shots. And something we'll talk about on this show because if you follow basketball closely, especially John Hollinger at ESPN, Bryant's late-game heroics have largely been exposed. He's actually a below-average shooter in clutch situations. But you see so many game-winning shots because, one, the Lakers win a lot of games or are in a lot of games. So the opportunity presents itself a lot. And, of course, they go into the playoffs. So you see Bryant extending his season so much longer than other players. So now he hits the big jumper that they had to have at Toronto. Instead of a 2-4 road trip, it's a 3-3 road trip. All's good in LA again, right? Kobe with the game winner again. He stepped up under pressure, right?
Well, Kobe made that shot, no question about it. Who else was going to take it? You know, and there were a lot of big shots for Kobe Bryant on this road trip. Every one of the 6 games that the Lakers played on their East Coast swing was in doubt in the last 3 minutes or so of play in the fourth quarter. One tight game after the next. But to put Kobe and the Lakers in the proper perspective, we have to look at the entire body of work, not just the game winner at Toronto when Kobe was in a zone in the latter stages of the fourth quarter. And frankly, for most of this road trip, Kobe during crunch time was not very pretty. Let's take a look at how he fared in the last 3 minutes of regulation on this trip, plus the overtime session in Boston. Look at the numbers. Kobe over the road trip, 8 of 26 from the floor. That's 30.8%. 3 turnovers, 1 assist. All right, the shooting percentage was bad, but 26 shots versus only 1 assist, it's really hard to win that way, and your shooting percentage is never going to be very high when the defense knows that there's little chance that you're going to pass the basketball. They know you're going to shoot. Guess what? They're going to have 5 guys or 3 guys or however many guys it takes to make sure that you don't get a good open look. So here we are. We're 28 games into the NBA season. Kobe Bryant has taken 675 field goal attempts. Number 2 in the NBA, Kevin Durant at 523. So Kobe's taken 150 more shots than anyone else in the league so far this season. And it's a big part of why the Lakers are sitting now at 16-12. Mediocre basketball team. He's only made 44% of those shots for the season. That's his lowest percentage since the 2004-2005 campaign. And his 3.7 turnovers per game, those are a career high right now for Kobe Bryant. So Kobe made the headline on Sunday. He hit the game winner. But what's not making headlines right now might be more important right now than Kobe actually hitting that one shot to win a game for LA.
Coming up next, we're not done with the Lakers on today's show. Some interesting aspects to tonight's game against the Hawks in the Staples Center coming up in Money Time. You're watching Vegas Sports Day.
Oh, hello there. My name is Brandon Gooch Hahn, host of Awkward Silence 2.1. And when I'm not living vicariously through Chris Phillips, I'm on VegasVideoNetwork.com.
Livestream is your premier place to watch live events on the web, mobile devices, and connected TVs. See new events daily or broadcast your own at livestream.com. Livestream. Be there.
Let's raise the roof, y'all. It's the Valentine's Day edition of Money Time. Yeah, on the show notes that Dave prints out every morning, it says, okay, guys, it's money time. No. We need a little excitement. We need a little drama come money time.
We can only try.
And, of course, this edition of Money Time is brought to you by Covers.com. Remember, for all the key information you need in every sport, Covers covers the numbers. Let's start tonight in Indianapolis, where the Miami Heat are 2-point road favorites as they look to go for 3 wins in 3 nights, taking on a Pacers team that has slumped of late, losing 3 consecutive ball games. Now, so far this year in the NBA, we've seen a number of teams play these 3 games in 3 night situations. Only 2 of them have come out unscathed. Oklahoma City and Chicago, the 2 teams that were able to win 3 games in 3 days. You know, the question for Miami, instead of fatigue after playing each of the last 2 nights, does this present a challenge for the Heat? As to look and see if they can match up with other elite teams in the league, like the Thunder and the Bulls. Dwayne Wade's quote, obviously, it's a big deal. Eric Spoelstra's quote, now that we've gotten to this point, it means something to win that 3rd game. And if they're focused, certainly no physical issues in the way for Miami, relatively rested for a team playing on the 3rd of 3 nights.
Yeah, you've got to understand the ego issues when you're going through the daily handicapping of the NBA. When the A players are going to play at an A level, that's something you don't find a lot in this type of setting. We might be finding it tonight. I think what Teddy said is right. These guys know that the Bulls and Thunder pulled this off. They know that Derrick Rose and Kevin Durant pulled this off. So there's that ego element. Yeah, we want to match those guys. The mental part will be there. How about the physical? Could you come into a 3rd in 3 better than Miami tonight? Let's take a look at the minutes for the big 3 in the first 2 games of this trip, when you're going to see it managed so very well. LeBron James only 30-26 and 32-54, 2 of his lowest of the year. Dwayne Wade 23-56 and 28, 2 of his lowest of the year. Chris Bosh 31-39 and 29-59. These are the equivalent of a couple of nice practice days or scrimmages, and note that none of those minutes were tough crunch time 4th quarter minutes. Both games were well under control. So not only is that part working for them, we're seeing another thing come into play. We actually notice it more from his absence than his presence. Mario Chalmers is getting into a nice rhythm with the big 3 and having a good year. We noticed this when they went to Orlando last week, got beat by 13, the only game Chalmers has missed. You ordinarily wouldn't have thought that was that big of a hole. It was that night. But Chalmers now up to number 6 in the NBA in three-point percentage, shooting 47.1 and getting into a real comfort zone. We're going to use a quote by him to set this up, specifically talking about LeBron James. He said, "I'm just moving without the ball and finding various spaces. I know what LeBron is going to do. I know where his vision is going to be." That's something they didn't have last year. If he keeps knocking the shots down at that rate, that's a big added dimension.
While Miami is finishing up this third game in 3 nights situation, Indiana's just starting theirs. They're going to play each of the next 3 nights, and they're not in very good form right now. 0-3 straight up and 0-5 ATS runs for the Pacers right now, and all 3 of their recent losses came against short-handed opponents, teams that the Pacers were supposed to be able to beat, at least hang with. Here's a quote from Roy Hibbert, quote, "It's a double whammy. We're struggling right now, and we're about to play a lot of games with no days in between. We've got our backs against the wall." Here's a quote from Indiana head coach Frank Vogel, quote, "I'll manage it like a back-to-back, which will be a slight reduction in minutes, but I want to make sure I use my bench, obviously, but I'm not going to overreact to it." The Pacers' problem right now, you can look at, you want to point the finger, point guard. Darren Collison is struggling a little bit in recent games. He scored in single digits each of the last 3 ball games. His backup, George Hill, is out, and the duo had been fairly effective for a good portion of the season, not so much lately. When you look at Miami, we often think the way to exploit the Heat is at the point guard position. You know what? Right now, Indiana, not really capable of doing just that.
Now that they've got the Staples Center all cleaned up from the Grammys leaving, it's back to basketball tonight. Lakers return home. They're a 5.5-point favorite over Atlanta. First game of an annual trek that they make because of the Grammys. We talked about the Spurs and what they have to do on rodeo time. But something that basketball people might not understand, the Grammy Museum is right across the street from the Staples Center. There's a big reason why that building is where it is. Now, I already talked about Kobe Bryant on that road trip for the Lakers, maybe being a little bit overrated. Now, some other questions come into play. Not just the Lakers on this trip, but we've consistently talked about teams the first game back after a long trip. You've got a lot of administrative things you've got to do when you come home. You've got bills to pay. You've got wives and or girlfriends who haven't seen you in a while. And maybe this adds a little extra pressure being Valentine's Day. One of our all-time favorite NBA stories, and this comes from a clubhouse boy for the Philadelphia 76ers with Daryl Dawkins. Dawkins comes in one day, tells the guy, "You know what, today's Valentine's Day, isn't it?" Guy says, "Yeah." "Okay, here's a list. Want a dozen roses to go to each of these women." 21 different NBA road cities were on that list. There were a couple that were missing. Daryl wasn't quite as good as maybe we thought he was, but almost every league around, or every city around the league, he had at least one female that those roses were going to go to. So there is that little added pressure of Valentine's Day. But in general, we want to talk about just what this trip has meant to the Lakers in the past.
Yeah, this isn't obviously the first time that the Lakers have had to vacate the Staples Center for the Grammys. It's happened 8 times in recent years. 3 of those road trips led directly into the All-Star break. So we're not going to record the first game back. It's not really a valid situation. But the other 5, they tell a pretty consistent tale for LA as they return home following the Grammy road trip. A look at the numbers. In 2010, Lakers minus 10.5-point chalk against Charlotte. They lose that game outright. They win by a bucket, 99-97. Never sniffed a point spread cover in that contest. In 2009, they're laying 12 to Oklahoma City. LA wins 105-98, point spread loss. Again, never sniffed a point spread cover. 2007, they lose straight up and against the spread. The Knicks beat them outright 107-106. LA was minus 7.5 in that ball game. Never sniffed a point spread cover. 2006, LA returns home. They're laying 5 to Houston. They lose that game straight up and against the spread as well. 5-point chalk. They lose by a single point to the Rockets. That's 2006. I'm sorry. 2005. Well, they beat Utah 102-95. Did they cover the minus 10? No, they did not. So that's an 0-5 point spread tally in which they lost to the spread by 31 points, an average of more than 6 per game. This year, might even get tougher due to the condensed schedule. And boy, this team, you're bringing in Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas, are you kidding? The Lakers are trying out Gilbert Arenas. Their problems might be a little bit deeper than we thought they were, Dave.
Problem tonight is the flip side. You probably have noticed we haven't talked about the Atlanta Hawks much on this show. There's a reason for it. This is one of the most erratic teams in the NBA. Half of their games have been decided in double figures. 8 double-figure wins, 6 double-figure losses. A team with the talent they have should never lose that many games in double figures this early in the season. They're a real difficult part of this equation. Also, some questions about their mentality here. We can look at their last 5 trips. Losses by 24, 8, 13, 29, and 11. Not a whole lot of confidence playing in this building. Yeah, it's a nice spot to bet against the Lakers, but is it a good enough spot to bet on the Hawks?
When we come back, we're going to shift our focus to the NCAA hardwoods. We're going to break down Alabama and Florida, 2 teams both trying to sort through some difficult times. Money time. We'll be right back.
Traditional media believes that after about 3 minutes, you'll tune out. Most Vegas media companies think if it doesn't jiggle, you won't tune in. At the Vegas Video Network, we think both are wrong. The Vegas Video Network is the first and only live online broadcast network that specializes in insider news and expert views about Vegas. We combine great storytelling with the ability to watch when and where you want on your computer, mobile device, or television. Discover the real Las Vegas. Visit VegasVideoNetwork.com.
We're going to really break down this Alabama-Florida game in Tuscaloosa this evening. The Gators, 3-point road chalk over the Crimson Tide. And obviously, these are tough days right now for Alabama head coach Anthony Grant. The game over the weekend with all the suspensions, they were without JaMychal Green, Trevor Relaford, Tony Mitchell, and Andrew Steele. Now, Mitchell had already been suspended last week, but Green, Relaford, and Steele all made the trip to Baton Rouge to play LSU, but not only were they suspended for the game, they were sent home immediately, escorted by a graduate assistant on the day of the game in a rental car. They're like, get out of town now. And they did. Relaford and Steele are expected back tonight. Grant's quote, good people who made a bad decision. But this was a 3rd different suspension for JaMychal Green. He may not be invited back. And the status of Mitchell, unknown as of airtime today. So details, we've got very few. In fact, we have none. The only thing we got is from Grant. He gave us a quote that is usually attributed to John C. Maxwell. The quote, talent is a gift, character is a choice.
The flip side of this equation also brings some issues. Florida team that had been off to a dynamic start to the season really came up lame last week. Showdown game against Kentucky, got blown out. Home revenge game against Tennessee on Saturday. Did not respond well at all. Lost outright as a double-figure favorite. So now another coach gets angry. Closed-door meeting after the game. And over again, all Billy Donovan had to do was use 3 letters. NIT. Something that his program got relegated to in back-to-back seasons not that long ago. Saying, guys, if we don't pick it up, this is what happens. Real specific. NIT, is that the way you want your season to end? So we take this from Kenny Boynton in terms of a reaction. It's an eye-opener, but it can only be one way. We've got to wake up and play, or we could be in the NIT. Question is, if they have to wake up and play, why did they fall asleep in the first place? A team that we thought we liked because of veteran leadership in that backcourt. Boynton and Walker, they've combined for 195 career starts. That's very, very rare. So what went wrong last week? What we could see the most was first a complete lack of offensive patience. Against Kentucky and Tennessee, when things went bad, they resorted to jacking up too many perimeter shots. Let's take a look at just how many they took. Because even though they went into the Kentucky game leading the nation in 3-pointers made per game at 10.5, you don't let it get this far out of hand. In those 2 games, Florida took 53 2-point attempts, but 56 beyond the arc. Doesn't matter how well you shoot the basketball. If you're taking over half of your shot attempts beyond the three-point line, you're not going to win. It shows a lack of poise when things started to go wrong, which we would not have expected from a veteran team. But it wasn't just the shooting, it was also what happened on defense. Both of those losses last week, they allowed at least 75 points. Kentucky and Tennessee shot over 50%. So now we've got issues on both sides of this. Alabama, from a personnel standpoint, but where did that Florida psyche go? We've got a lot to break down.
Yeah, I mean, Bama's going to bring energy for this ball game. Don't know if they're going to have much polish or sophistication when it comes to their offensive and defensive sets. Even if Relaford and Steele, as expected, are reinstated, Mitchell and Green, we're talking about the team's 2 leading scorers and 2 leading rebounders, essentially their entire interior game. Grant went with 4 freshman starters at LSU and junior Ben Eblin, who was making only his 2nd career start. It also meant going with 4 guards and a forward. So LSU was really able to break them down in the paint. 22 of 38 on 2-point shot attempts. That's nearly a 58% clip. You know, the usual notion of wearing the other team down with presses is out of the window because they're shorthanded right now. If anyone's going to get worn down with presses, it's going to be the Alabama side. The question, can the crowd turn things up a notch? Will they cheer more for younger guys who are trying hard than they will for some prima donna upperclassmen?
So there's a big energy situation here for Alabama. It's one of those classic storybook things where the young guys scrap, play hard, the crowd really gets into it, they pull the upset. Or it's a case where they get exploited because the other side can simply play so much better basketball. The one thing you've got to be aware of, it's going to sound real good. Alabama suspended their 4 best players. They might get killed. That's in line. Of course, you got to understand, if those players were not suspended, Alabama, 2.5, maybe even a 3-point favorite. So there's been a big adjustment for those suspensions. Is it enough? That's the difficulty because we're not sure if we can trust Florida. Yeah, we'd like to think these veterans, off of a loss, will bounce back. Here's the problem. Tonight isn't the spot for that. Saturday was the spot. Florida's veterans on national TV got blown out by Kentucky last Tuesday night. You've got Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to get your pride element together, to watch films of Tennessee beating you the first time around. That is supposed to be an A game on Saturday. Instead, they lost, literally beaten wire to wire, trailed in double figures for much of the game, despite the fact that they were a double-figure favorite. So the notion is not, does Florida rebound tonight? No, they were supposed to have on Saturday. If they couldn't do it then, do we trust them now? A lot of food for thought. It's on ESPN. We know a lot of you are going to be watching. It's just tough to make that final call. But there is one game on this board we are willing to take a call on.
Oh, absolutely, Dave. This is a game that I know there are a lot of very sharp bettors that are going to be on the other side. I think they're wrong. Dave thinks they're wrong. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. Play of the daytime for Valentine's Day. And yeah, we're going to lay it on the road with the Miami Heat looking for their 3rd win in 3 nights. I say they get it, and they get it by more than 2 points. Miami -2, the Vegas Sports Day play of the day.
So the Heat are going to get it. The question is, has he fulfilled enough of his list so that he will also?
Well, you guys will have to stay tuned for tomorrow. I'll give all the juicy details, I'm sure.
Oh, no. A simple yes or no would suffice. The details, not so much.
Kara gave me a 98.5% chance. So I'm the favorite. And you're the favorite. You're our favorite audience ever. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to spend with us. For Malinsky, I'm Savransky. Enjoy the games, enjoy the night. Good luck. We'll see you again tomorrow.